Hello, and welcome back to Analog Slop, where two music industry lifers revisit the enemy and melody maker of their youth, which in our case is the 90s. We're exploring artists we discovered as wide-eyed teenagers, only to disown as sneering 20-somethings. Now, unshackled from our hipster baggage, we dive deep into the pre-digital age to look back on a time when music news came but once a week. My name is Graham Best. I've worked in music publishing and music tech for over 20 years.
And my name is Adam Bushell. I've been a music supervisor for 20 years.
Each week, one of us will read the NME, one of us will read the Melody Maker, and we will pick out the most interesting stories and discuss them.
Join us this week for part 2 of our 2-part look at the enemy and Melody Maker from the 14th of September 1991. This week, we explore landmark UK punk band Leatherface and their classic Mush album, and PM Dawn predict the music of the 2010s with their debut album.
Welcome back to Analog Slop. We are continuing our dive into the enemy and the Melody Maker of the 14th of September 1991. As is the way, I have the Melody Maker this week. Adam is still on the NME. So I will be getting straight into a Melody Maker album review. An opportunity arose this week to talk about a band that are pretty special to me, but that even as a relentless proselytizing teen, I recognized would be a hard sell to my peers, which if you have any awareness of any knowledge of a lack of self-awareness of teenagers, you'll realize is a big statement. However, this is one of the exact scenarios I imagined when we started this podcast, which was an opportunity to talk about artists that had made an impact on us, but had maybe slipped through the cracks of the kind of 90s nostalgia industrial complex. Which is why this week I will be talking about the discreetly influential Sunderland punk band Leatherface and their 1991 high point, the Mush album. This was released on Fire Records sub-label Roughneck. And if you know anything about the profiles of British indie labels of the 90s, you'll realize what a statement Fire Records sub-label is. In a 12-track form, before having 3 extra B-sides stuck on for its reissue and CD version, which included a frantic cover of the Police's Message in a Bottle that got a fair bit of evening session and John Peel airplay on Radio 1. Like I mentioned at the top, this is not by any stretch of the imagination easy listening, which is not to say that this is an especially progressive or, experimental sound. Effectively, if you take peak SST era Husker Du, Motorhead at their most melodic, and a kind of Tyneside lyrical spin on Springsteen's Darkness on the Edge of Town, you are pretty close to understanding the Leatherface formula. The band have, if not exactly been absorbed into the alt rock canon, at least found a degree of recognition and respect from later generations. The NME, I should add the 21st Century Online version, placed Mush at number 1 in 2012 on its list of 20 lost albums ripe for rediscovery. There are a ton of US emo adjacent kind of blue collar punk bands, like think stuff like the Gaslight Anthem, like Downwards, who cite Leatherface as an influence. And hard to believe as this is, The Guardian described them as the greatest British punk band of the modern era in 2015. But during their prime active years, which is broadly from 1988 to 1995, they never had anything approaching a crossover hit and were, I think to call them deeply unfashionable is maybe a bit harsh, but they didn't fit with the established 90s music media columns. They weren't metal enough for Kerrang, although in fairness, Kerrang had some hardcore Leatherface fans on their writing staff, and it was the first place that I ever heard about them. And they're a bit too grimy and embedded within the European sort of punk underground network to fit with the weeklies on any consistent basis. Getting a little self-indulgent, I got introduced to them via a semi-random recommendation on one of my first visits as a teenager to Heaven Sent Records, which is an obscure, long-gone independent record shop in the back streets of Guildford we have mentioned before. That store was named after a Leatherface song from Mush's follow-up, which is 1993's Minx, and I swear they permanently had the entire Leatherface discography in stock, ready to be thrust at impressionable young music buyers. Adam, slightly different question to my usual trigger point. Like I said, I remember Leatherface being a very private listening experience. Like, were you aware of them at all? Like, did I in fact try and force their music on you and I've chosen to forget it? Or even was it something you discovered independently because Heaven Sent attempted to sell you their entire discography?
Yeah, you don't want symposium, you want this. No, I definitely heard about them. No, do you know what? I had a friend who was older than me who read Kerrang and listened to metal, and he had Mush. I remember it. I remember that was the only, but it was like a spine on a shelf. It wasn't something I had any awareness of, and I knew that Heaven Sent Records was named after a Leatherface song, and you would have told me that. And I imagine you would have told me that in the context of how great Leatherface are. Not to the point where you were like, borrow a copy of this and tape it or whatever, but like they definitely would have been discussed. Listening to Mush, it does sound like a lot of the stuff that we were listening to at that time. So I can't imagine they wouldn't have come up.
Yeah, which is an interesting point because and I think so much of this is to do with the vocals. I instinctively knew, like, if I was making a mixtape that I would love to be listening to, like, Leatherface is going in. If I was making a mixtape for, like, our group listening in, like, the car or something, Leatherface was definitely not going
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
Right? I flagged it internally as, like, this is a hard sell to people who are not already on board.
The vocals are a barrier. That's for sure.
Yes. Yes, that is a fair statement. So hold that thought while we get into this Melody Maker review. This is a single column, 5 paragraph piece tucked up next to a review of an album by some American band called Nirvana. And yet, this is an aggressively, some may say unrealistically, positive review. It contains lines like, "Mush bursts with potential killer singles." And our intrepid reviewer, who is Kathy Unsworth in this case, is, and I quote, "left wondering how extreme the possibility of Leatherface redefining pop and blasting open the charts is." Um, and spoiler, that's an extremely, extremely extreme possibility.
Yeah, not to rush ahead, but these songs are poppy, but they're not pops. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's Blink 182 or something.
No, no, it really, really isn't. Although amusingly, like, this album did apparently get, like, a limited US release, on a subsidiary of a major.
Yeah,
Like, someone was like, "We can pick up the rights dirt cheap, like, guitar music's hot, let's give it a go." Like, obviously, it sold about, like, 8 copies.
okay.
I mean, like, I don't wanna sound like I'm being negative, like, I really need to restate how much I adore this album.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I would absolutely back its status as, like, the best punk album of the '90s. It is unfortunate that the lyrics are frequently wonderful and, like, one of the highlights of the whole thing, but they are very, very hard to make out on account of the fact that the vocals are mixed quite weirdly. The vocals sound like Lemmy, with a Sunderland accent, and there is, like, so many, like, stacks of guitar threatening to overwhelm them. But trust me, lyrics are wonderful.
Vocals sound like Lemmy gargling razor blades.
Yes. Yes, that is entirely accurate. I think there's at least 2 songs here that would feature in a hypothetical "My 50 Favorite Songs Ever" list. The first of those is "Springtime," which is this incredibly urgent, like, razor sharp Husker Du if they had 2 guitarists sermon of sort of hungover regret, but the hangover is lasting your entire adult life. Like, even when the sort of syntax of the lyrics, like, starts to buckle a bit, like, the band's whole performance is so committed and the broad themes are so, like, emotionally kind of generous that, like, it just absolutely works for me. The second is the album closer, Dead Industrial Atmosphere, which is this sort of grinding, careering lament for Sunderland's, like, post-shipbuilding decline, like, rendered in that sort of this sounds like hyperbole, but to me, it's the sort of, like, evocative, poetic strokes that would, like, comfortably fit into the Springsteen lyric book. I once sat on a train going through like Belfast's like semi-derelict dock area in this torrential downpour, listening to this.
You know how to have a good time.
Yeah, and, like it had an overwhelming effect.
Yep, yep.
There's also a wonderful, if still challenging recording of this on YouTube where Frankie Stubbs, the singer and kind of co-lead guitarist, performs this acoustically sat in the middle of Sunderland's now very derelict and also absolutely enormous shipbuilding docks. It's really beautifully shot. I think it's an incredible song. I think that's from 2010 or so. His vocals have changed with age, but not necessarily become more accessible. The Melody Maker review makes this claim that hard men in big boots can make the tenderest kind of music. And as kind of simultaneously like glib and cloying as that statement is, like those two tracks alone make that case pretty hard to argue against for me. All of that said, like the idea that Leatherface could break the charts and, you know, quote, redefine pop music is absolutely unhinged.
Yeah.
That 2015 Guardian piece that I referenced earlier, written by James McMahon, is actually an obituary for lead guitarist Dickie Hammond and the band itself, from 2015, when Dickie Hammond died aged 50. It's worth quoting from at length because I think it captures the essence of the band and Mush and what drew me in. So it reads as so. At times like these, people make claims suggesting a band deserved more commercial success or mass recognition than they actually achieved. In the case of Leatherface, it doesn't seem appropriate. The essence of so much that made the band great is the emotional currency of the masses. No punk rock group ever mastered melancholia like they did, but few of their songs are instantly palatable. Few could have blazed from the radio at breakfast without upsetting the baby. This is music that demanded a degree of effort, or at least investment from the listener. But then most of the best things do. And 30 years on from being introduced to them, that's where I still land with Leatherface and Mush. It's not for everyone. Like, it can be punishing work. It's probably not the best album to listen to when you're tired or have a headache, but there's a magic and an emotional articulacy and availability and like an absence of cynicism to the record that makes for an incredibly special listen if you can break through that discomfort.
It is the 14th of September 1991. This week I had the NME. This week in the NME, there is an interview with US rap duo PM Dawn. The band is made up of brothers Atrell and Jarrett Cords, aka Prince B and DJ Minute Mix. They are interviewed by Yestin George. The title of the article is Overweight, Overplayed, and Overhear.
Fucking hell. All right. So we've set out the stall for this article then.
Yeah, that's nothing. So in 1991, PM Dawn couldn't be more of the time, while simultaneously being an utterly unique, downright futuristic proposition. We will circle back to this contradiction in a bit. Their music was a blend of hip hop, R&B, and what would come to be known as pop rap. Their image and lyrics are suffused with psychedelia, new age spirituality, and an early 90s version of consciousness culture. They have two mega hits, I Die Without You, which was released in 1992, taken from the Boomerang soundtrack, and the song which they're definitely best known for, 1991's Set Adrift on Memory Bliss. Set Adrift on Memory Bliss was a massive hit. It basically goes either top 5 or top 10 in every single market it was released in, including the US, where it would go to number 1. The ubiquity and broad appeal is mentioned in the first paragraph of this article. George states, "My mum likes them, your mum likes them, everyone's bloody mum likes them. Flick through the pages of the ink-stained dailies and glossy monthlies alike, and there they are." The band was mocked from the off. The hip-hop community was put off by their unabashedly pop image and melodic rapping. Again, more on this later. And the general public found much to ridicule in their physical appearance. Frontman Prince B's obesity and their tie-dye t-shirts, love beads, and John Lennon glasses. The band's videos look like an SNL parody of the band being performed by the band themselves.
That is harsh but fair.
It's like all of their ideas are cranked up to 11 and delivered without any self-awareness. Not to play my hand too early, but this is actually a large part of what makes their music so enjoyable and fun. Prince B's weight is mentioned several times in the interview. First, there is the title of the article, overweight, overplayed, and over here. Then in the intro, he is referred to as a monolithic sloth. In fact, the cover teases the article with the words, "Hey, big Spandau." These were less enlightened times, definitely. Although the journalists were quick to praise the music, they could not resist the constant digs at his appearance and soft demeanor. Again, more on this later. At this exact point in time, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss is midway through its 8-week run on the UK Top 40, and debut album of the Heart, of the Soul, and of the Cross, The Utopian Experience, has just been released. I'm going to refer to that album as The Utopian Experience from here on out. And again, like I said about the videos, that album title basically seems like an exercise in self-parody.
All their album titles are incredible.
Yeah. Their general titling of things is incredible. Set Adrift on Memory Bliss is an amazing song title, and I think PM Dawn is a fantastic name for a band. Anyway, Prince B and DJ Minute Mix grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, in a family of 7 boys. Two tragedies that happened in their childhood seem to have had a major effect on their music. Firstly, they lost their father when they were very young. Secondly, one of their brothers drowned when he was 2 years old. This was witnessed by Prince B, who was unable to save him. There's a documentary about this band for the Unsung TV series, which is available on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it. This documentary makes a clear link between these two tragedies and the band's interest in spirituality. In the 80s, brothers Atrell and Jarrett begin to make music. It is hip hop, but informed by Prince B's eclectic tastes, psychedelic rock, soul, and contemporary pop music. They record a demo of dreamy melodic hip hop and start to shop it around. One of these demos makes its way to Nick Kershaw's manager.
Consecutive mentions of Nick Kershaw in
Yeah.
episodes.
It's a Nick Kershaw special. He secures them a deal at G Street Records, famous for releasing records by Stereo MCs and giving UK deals to US rap acts like Jungle Brothers and Gravediggers, featuring Prince Paul, mentioned on the last episode.
From what I remember about G Street, it was named because that was literally the street the office was on.
That's correct.
G Street's just north of Old Street. I remember the first time I walked down it and was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, exactly. That's Stereo MCs. Get to work, you lazy bastards.
I
um,
I think it was more a case of these guys made me buy awful UK pressings of hip hop 12 inches.
so after getting signed to G Street, the band moved to London, where they begin recording music. A fact about them, I had no idea. Their debut album and early music was all recorded in London.
That's crazy. Like I did not know that at all.
Yeah, considering how good those records are and how good the production is on some of those tracks, they don't sound like they were made in the UK. That's no slight to UK production techniques, but there's a certain type of mastering that happens to pop music that the in America they're really, really good at, and in the UK not quite so good at, that just make these records sound incredibly thick and attention grabbing.
There's a weight and an impact
Yes.
to these records that is not in keeping with a lot of sort of like, I don't know, a lot of like UK pop from this era. Sounds like the mix engineer like really needs to take less pills at the weekend and stop making everything so floaty.
Yeah, and thin.
Thin is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So the band released their first single, "Ode to a Forgetful Mind," in 1989. This song is strongly influenced by label mates Jungle Brothers and other Native Tongues acts. I think it's a good place to pause here and lay out the Native Tongues timeline as it weaves in and out of PM Dawn's, because a lazy criticism of PM Dawn might be that they cynically add a shiny European early 90s dance pop sound on top of a Native Tongues influence. But I think it's more accurate to say that they developed a distinctive style at the same time that Native Tongues acts were releasing their debut records, a style which no doubt takes influence from some of these records but forges its own path. So here's the Native Tongues timeline as it weaves in and out of PM Dawn. In 1988, Jungle Brothers released Straight Out the Jungle. 1989, De La Soul released 3 Feet High and Rising. 1989, the same year, PM Dawn released their debut single Ode to a Forgetful Mind. In 1990, A Tribe Called Quest released People's Instinctive Travels.
Probably, sorry, just to butt in
Mm,
briefly. With that Tribe album release, from memory, that album is recorded a long time before 1990. It
interesting.
just takes a long time to get released.
Okay, okay. It's got some big samples on it. um,
Lou Reed needs to eat.
yeah, exactly. So in May of 91, the aforementioned De La Soul is Dead is released by De La Soul. And in September of 91, PM Dawn release The Utopian Experience. Also, probably worth mentioning Canadian hip hop group Dream Warriors, who share a similar aesthetic and released their debut, and now the legacy begins in 1991. So, alongside the rise of gangster rap, hip hop is undergoing a parallel evolution. Music that is more positive, eclectic, open minded. Records that draw from psychedelia, jazz, soul, spirituality, and alternative culture rather than street reportage and confrontation. Native tongues are perhaps the most visible expression of this moment, but they're not the only ones. PM Dawn emerged from this same moment. But where native tongues broadened the possibilities of hip hop, PM Dawn dissolved its boundaries altogether. It set fire to its boundaries, basically.
Yeah, I actually really like the idea of them dissolving it because native tongues is like, it's bringing jazz into like East Coast new like hip hop orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Whereas what PM Dawn are doing is more like kind of like bringing elements of hip hop to new age music.
Yes. And even bolder, like mainstream pop music. But we will circle back to that. So let's look at the music. In particular, I want to look at their hit single, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss. That, as I mentioned earlier, was a top 10 hit in the UK at the time of the publication of this interview. The backing track is built from 3 dominant samples. There is the popular drum break from Ashley's Roach clip by the Soul Searchers, which, according to Who Sampled, has been sampled in 611 songs. To name a few, Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim, Girl You Know It's True by Milli Vanilli, and Unbelievable by EMF. We could literally be here all day listing songs everybody would have heard of that samples this break. It's a classic head nodder and instantly recognizable and incredibly evocative of late 80s and early 90s hip hop and pop music.
It could even be on that Manchester mix of Billy Bragg's Sexuality.
I really, really hope it is. I've yet to find out because the CD hasn't arrived yet. Then there is a break from Take Me to the Mardi Gras by Bob James. Similarly, this record has been
Hell yeah.
rinsed. It's been sampled 536 times, according to Who Sampled. Pied Piper by Run DMC, Straight Outta Compton by NWA, Hold It Now Hit It by Beastie Boys. How many you got, basically? We could similarly just keep listing songs everybody's heard of. Interestingly, they do not use the opening like most people, or that kind of electric piano riff that comes later in the track. They use the trippy Lalo Schifrin-esque, quite dark break from the middle, dropping it with great effect in the latter half of the track. So, in terms of the samples, so far, so typical of the era. But the third sample is where things get interesting. They use multiple parts of True by Spandau Ballet. In the early 90s, this is incredibly incongruous. The world of 1983 that True was released in is a distant memory in 1991. It feels like its placement is nostalgia bait for the listener. This was a trick used much by Puff Daddy and Puff Daddy-esque jiggy rap artists of the late 90s, but crossover rap was already sampling 80s hits in the early 90s.
Something I find interesting when I look at, I think 3 Feet High and Rising is one of the ones that jumps out for this most of all, actually. And as such of it on De La Soul is Dead as well, is that when you put some of these records in like chronological context, we think of them as like, I don't know, say like you sample like Heartbeat by Tanya Gardner,
Yeah,
say like Love Come Down, like one of those other like classics or like post disco breaks. You might hear it and be like, oh, that's like a cool old record, like nice. Like from our perspective, it is. But at the time, those were not like classic obscure records. Those were like club tracks that had been big like 6, 7 years previously.
yeah,
So the kind of the historical distance how those sample sources are perceived, I think is a little bit different. Like it's easy to say like, oh yeah, like kind of like PM Dawn predates the Bad Boy thing of like going for kind of like the biggest, most obvious like pop hooks you can think of, like that was still in the popular consciousness to a
Yeah.
degree. But like, but in reality, when you start to consider like the timelines of original releases, like versus like hip hop in the kind from the kind of mid 80s onwards, like some of the gaps between original release and sample usage are surprisingly short.
Well, I mean, you could say, De La Soul sample Hall& and Notes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good example.
So, but I think there's a difference in there's a difference of degree here. Do you know what I mean? And a slight difference in philosophy. I think we're looking at different definitions of eclecticism and how the intent behind the sampling affects the eclecticism. I don't think that the Hall& and Oates sample is taken as a way to recontextualize it, and it's like, "Hey, we're hearing something different in this, and we want you to hear it too." It's like Afrika Bambaataa dropping the clapping song by Shirley Ellis in his sets, like block parties. It's kind of more in line with that in that actually, check out this song, which is way funkier than you think it is, rather than what PM Dawn are doing, which I think is slightly different. I'm not saying that they're basically going, "Hey guys, you remember how much you love True by Spandau Ballet? Like we're going to represent it to you and remind you how much you love it." I think they're doing something completely different.
While we were talking, I was checking in on True's chart position because I'd been developing a theory in the back of my head that the use of True came about because they had relocated to London and were recording in the UK.
Yeah,
But having looked at the chart placings for True, it got to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100.
it's a huge MTV hit. I think to illustrate the difference of what's going on here, you could look at artists who have done similar things around the time of Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, right? So a closer comparison might be MC Hammer sampling Super Freak by Rick James on You Can't Touch This, or Vanilla Ice sampling Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie on Ice Ice Baby. And both these records are released in 1990, so we're buffeted right up against this. But Rick James and Queen, these tracks are effectively sampling bass lines and grooves. What is unique about using Spandau Ballet is the mood it creates. This kind of dreamy, melancholic, wistful, reflective vibe. You might point to other hip hop that achieves the same thing. I could be describing Summertime by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. This track is built around a sample of Summer Madness by Kool and the Gang. But this track is part of the music vocabulary that hip hop producers are already drawing on: soul, funk, jazz, R&B. It is mainstream, yes, but it is in another world to a blue-eyed soul, sophisticated pop record. The use of this track goes beyond the rhythmic utility of most sampling. It is true juxtaposition, closer to something like One O Tricks Point Never's Echo Jams.
Yes, that's yeah. That's like I realize that to the casual listener that may sound like a reach, but I fully agree. Like the way that True is deployed is as a texture
Yes.
rather than a kind of like than a bedrock of the arrangement.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Daniel Lepartin, One O Tricks Point Never, his Echo Jams, basically, they just loop fragments of pop songs endlessly. They and it flips and deepens the meaning of the source.
Yeah, the Chris Burr one being the big one.
Yeah, exactly. So on top of these samples, you have Prince B's vocals. His delivery is decades ahead of its time. His rapping is melodic, soft, languid. He has an unhurried murmur. He drops in and out of singing, rapping, and speaking. His delivery is highlighted in the article. George is unaware of how prophetic a description of this style is when he says, "Just as Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity by sitting under an apple tree, PM Dawn have also stumbled on a comparatively simple method of earning their place in the history books, and it's called singing." He goes on to describe their music as harmonious pop and calls them minstrels from a parallel universe. We'll explore this further a bit later, but they are in fact from this universe. They have just arrived from 20 years in the future.
They are the godfathers of cloud rap.
Yes, well, not just cloud rap, but melodic Drake style rap singing. And then there's his lyrics. They have a trippy, dreamlike logic, bouncing between self examination and existential questioning. Again, unusual then, but something that would become much more common in mainstream hip hop and niche hip hop genres like the aforementioned cloud rap. The formation of their sound is described in the interview. The duo grew up listening to Run DMC and Eric B. and Rakim. It was natural their early stuff took the traditional hip hop path. Then one day I sort of stopped because it got stale, shrugs Prince B. Everyone liked our demos, but I just didn't feel right about it. I was just conditioning myself to do what people expected me to do. Once I let go and started writing songs, the influences became Buffalo Springfield and Bob Dylan instead of rap. Prince B also has an admirable contemporary to the early 90s eclecticism as well. He name checks Blur, 808 State, and Happy Mondays as contemporary bands he listens to. George mentions the group's sampling eclecticism as well in the article, highlighting Prince, Steppenwolf, Sergio Mendes, Kraftwerk, and Atlantic Star as adding to the richest web of melody and harmony released this year. Prince B is unapologetic about his sample choices in the interview, stating simply, if I hear a song I like, I'll use it. The sheer quality and novelty of Set Adrift made it a huge instantaneous hit. Almost as instantaneously, they become punching bags for hip hop genre heads, famously catching the ire of KRS-One and being parodied mercilessly in the 1994 film Fear of a Black Hat. You seen that film?
Not for years. I think I saw it with you.
Oh, okay, it's kind of CB4-esque kind of thing. I don't think it's as good as CB4, but it's all right. So in the film, rapper Tone Deaf takes a PM Dawn-inspired career shift and forms the band hilariously titled New Human Formantics, uh, recording the song recording the song "I'm Just a Human." So when PM Dawn start to disappear in the latter half of the 90s, Let Adrift on the Memory Bliss becomes a kind of knowing wink deployed in comedy, soft focus, saccharine moments on film and TV soundtracks. And this is where it sits in the public consciousness for years. Now I would argue this song sounds startlingly contemporary. Prince
Yeah.
B no longer sounds like a one-off. Here's what a huge chunk of contemporary mainstream hip hop sounds like. I mean, you mentioned cloud rap, so absolutely there's a it's a pretty niche genre, but it's more like the influence is not just felt like a niche genres. It's like in the most mainstream billions of streams, like the biggest music on the planet, you can feel this influence. Like
Mm.
the soft melodic delivery, the blurred line between rapping and singing, the introspection, the vulnerability, the willingness to prioritize mood and feeling over technical virtuosity.
Yeah, the deployment of, like, really gauzy, hazy textures.
Yeah, exactly. These are no longer outliers. They're like defining characteristics of mainstream rap music to this day. I know it's not, the most contemporary sound at the moment, but it still makes up a lot of what is popular. So, and yeah, and there's not even to mention the band's kind of bravura, internety ridiculousness, which is honestly a lot of what makes them so enjoyable. It's quite staggering to listen to this song now. It's both utterly of its time and literally decades ahead of its time, and it's just a great song. I love it. Um, so it's just a bit of a postscript here. Quickly want to talk about the four singles from the album and do a very brief catalogue corner. First single off the album is A Watcher's Point of View, Don't You Think? This is a solid up-tempo pop rap track. There's a Doobie Brothers sample that gives it a classic rock feel. Prince B is in full stream of consciousness, new age, freeform, gibberish mode for his lyrics. It's very good. Secondly, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss. This is a god tier pop song, 90s pop song. It's excellent.
I hear no lies.
Yes, good at times any. What is your relationship with this song been over the years? Does it kind of have you come back to it or you
Not to be that guy, but I feel like I never really left it.
okay.
Like, it's a real comfort blanket of a song because not only is it, like, kind of objectively, like, very, like, kinda gentle and soothing, like, it's kinda like arrangement and, like, delivery, but it's also, like, well, on the one hand, it's like it's a record from, like, that kinda, like, preteen era, which I think kinda, like, it's very easy to get, like, kind of warm and fuzzy nostalgia for, like, individually. But also to your point, like, it is insane how well it has aged.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, it sounds so, so contemporary in a way that, like, like, other hip hop of its era, like, does not. I don't wanna preempt you on this, but I think there are some really interesting, really knotty threads to try and untangle in terms of, like, the kinda crack epidemic of the '80s in New York in particular, and, like, how a lot of kinda, hip hop sort of reacts to that by taking, like, a sort of quite hyper masculine position.
Yeah,
Like, if you think about Chuck D, Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, they are all, like, kinda strong black men saying it with their chest.
yeah.
Like, it's literally, like, kinda like booming oratory, like, from them and so many others.
You must learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the whole source of the beef with PM Dawn, isn't it? Like, basically, PM Dawn start it by saying, "What's he even a teacher of?"
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and he shoves them off stage and then they yeah, it's crazy.
And says he's a teacher of respect, which
Yeah,
is fairly funny, to be fair.
yeah, exactly.
So, there are some things in there that, like, are really difficult to separate from one another in that, like, superficially, like, that, like, aggressive pushback against an alternative depiction of masculinity, like, gets my back up just instinctively. But I think you do need to contextualize it a bit in
Yes.
terms of what is happening to, like the black population of America, like, and New York in particular in the '80s, where hip hop is, like, at its, kind of most visible.
Yes, and also these are young men, late teens, early 20s, living in a very different time. It's interesting to contextualize, but it's not like we're kind of finger wagging at them from the future because that's is kind of incredibly reductive. But when somebody does step out of that mode, like PM Dawn, you're right. The music just ages in a completely different way and makes it sound incredibly contemporary.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you heard the Utopian Experience?
I gave it a listen this week. I'm not gonna pretend that I went deep on it. It was like, it's on in the background, I'm having a nice time, and the big
Yeah.
singles make me go, "Hell yeah." But yeah, the overall effect was like, I had a really pleasant time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the out and out classic that other people do, but yeah, I like the singles. I mean, getting to the singles, I mean, thirdly, the single that comes after Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, Paper Doll, I don't know if that stood up out to you, but for me, after Set Adrift, this is the best thing on the album. Prince B is kind of back on his languid murmur game, but this time the lyrics are intense and trippy. Melodically, this track is very new age, fourth worldy, but he uses the same beat as Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, which brings it closer to the kind of dance influenced soul and R&B of this period. I love this song. It's amazing. Fourth is Reality Used to Be a Friend of Mine, which is honestly closest to the sellout De La Soul tag that some hip hop journalists leveled at them.
That's one of the ones that stands out most to me. Like, I remember that from the release at the time. It leapt out on this listen as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like first track after the intro. It could be seen as a kind of broad, poppy, watered down extension of the 3 Feet High and Rising template. But, guess what? It's great. So we don't have to look at it like that.
Deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. The side note on this track is it was used in the none more 90s teen comedy Encino Man called California Man in the UK. So, I don't know if you remember this film, but the premise of this movie is this. Teenagers Sean Austin and Paulie Shaw, in their 20s and 30s respectively when this film was made, discover a frozen caveman played by Brendan Fraser in Sean Austin's garden. They unfreeze him and enroll him at their high school in a bid to become more popular. I won't spoil the ending for our listeners, but suffice to say, our heroes learn that being popular at school is not always cracked up to be.
I've never seen that film, obviously, but I have vivid memories of, like, seeing the cover in video rental
Yeah.
stores and being like, "No fucking way."
Yeah, I was like, yes, please. um, so, just want to end on brief catalog corner here. 3 out of the 4 of these singles come with excellent extended versions that are not on any DSPs, but can all be found on YouTube. The reality used to be a friend of mine. Club mix is a low point. We'll skip over that. A watcher's point of view, don't you think Youth Extended Mix is more solid than it has any right to be? It's a pretty straight extension of the original track. Now we get to the good stuff. The Paper Doll Club Mix is amazing, stretching the original to 6 minutes of Dream House bliss. Seriously, check
Really?
this out. It's
Okay.
really good. And then the piece de resistance is the Set Adrift on Memory Bliss extended mix, which turns up the drums, adds a whole new bass line, and teases out each of the elements over the opening 3 minutes of its 6-minute runtime. I implore our listeners to check it out. It's amazing.
I am so in.
Yeah.
Set adrift on memory bliss of you. Camera pans, a cocktail glass behind a blind of plastic plants. And finds a lady with a fat diamond ring. Then you know I can't remember a damn thing. I think it's
Join us next week for part 1 of our 2-part look at the enemy and melody maker from the 7th of September 1996. We'll be looking at the Charlatans and Imperial Teen.
In the meantime, you can find us on the socials and most of the usual places. That's Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all under the Analog Slop name. That's all one word and spelt ANALOGUESLOP. However, if you prefer your podcasts to involve static pictures, we are also on YouTube. That channel is youtube.com at ANALOGUE slop. And finally, if you want to send us an email, we're reachable predictably on analogslop@gmail.com.